have to let you all know before today's video starts that what you're about to see got me banned from Twitch. This whole thing was live streamed on my Twitch channel, and during the stream, not even after, during the stream, my channel got taken down. I got locked out of my Twitch account because Nintendo, I was able to confirm that it wasn't Nintendo. Twitch sent me an email saying Nintendo was the claimant, issued a DMCA takedown while I was live. Their claim says that they are the copyright holders of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Thankfully, I was able to appeal it, and Twitch gave me my channel back and removed the copyright strike, but Nintendo still did take me down for what you're about to watch. So that's fun. I had a boxing match happen, which meant that I got very far behind on everything in life in general, including The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So we're going to watch official trailer number 3, which I haven't seen yet. Then we're going to read some of the previews. The context ahead here is that I currently, and I'm so ready to eat my words, feel less excited about this than I felt about Breath of the Wild by a pretty significant margin. I have not seen official trailer 3. I have not read the previews. But currently, I just don't have the same level of hype. And I think there are a number of reasons that I feel that way. I think partly it's that I felt like Breath of the Wild was so magical, and it felt like almost like a once-in-a-lifetime game where like I don't even feel like an Elden Ring 2 would feel the same as Elden Ring. Like it's just so hard to come after Breath of the Wild. At least personally, I absolutely adored it. And I feel like that sentiment is not exclusive to me. I feel like there's been slightly less hype. The second part of that, which is why I'm really excited to watch the trailer today, is that I love games that introduced a lot of building mechanics, physics-related mechanics, from an observation standpoint. I really love seeing what the community does with things and seeing what other people manage to create. That facet of video games has never appealed to me that much. I love Minecraft, but when it comes to Zelda, what I really want is dungeons, which I feel like people contest whether Breath of the Wild even had dungeons. That's up for debate. I feel like the Divine Beasts count as dungeons. But I would love to see more dungeons, more elaborate dungeons than the Divine Beasts. And again, while I think that the crafting mechanics look very cool and are so technically impressive in terms of how Zelda manages physics, like never did I consider, playing Zelda when I was 6 years old that they would end up being like the pinnacle of video game physics. Yeah, what they've done is so impressive. But it's just not necessarily what I want from Zelda. I think it's also partly that this is one of the only Zelda games that exists on the exact same map, which is very different. It doesn't feel like a new Hyrule that we're getting lost in. It's just different. So we're going to watch official trailer 3 and then catch up on some of the previews. This has 9.7 million views, even though it came out 3 weeks ago. That's a lot of views. So let's make sure 1080 is apparently the highest quality that they do over it. The Nintendo of America channel. And let's do it. I've not had anything spoiled for me. I'm excited. So far, about the same as what we've seen before. I do like that music though. Link. What will he do next? Look at him go. So, I don't remember if they've addressed fall damage. Well, I like the look of that. God, Breath of the Wild was so good. At least this is making me remember that. Oh. That's a hint at a dungeon, right? Looks very dramatic. This is a good trailer. This is a very good trailer.
Zelda, we rely on your knight and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
It's a little boy in a green tunic. I'm sorry, he's great. He's the hero of time. I apologize. The weapon combination stuff is very cool. I mean, what? Boy got rockets now? Whoa.
I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world.
Matt Mercer, Matt Mercer.
Okay, let's go!
Dude, I have hella chills.
You are
This
not
music.
alone. Link. You are our final hope.
Okay. This is a really good trailer.
Link. You must find me.
Wow, that's a good trailer. I have goosebumps. So, couple of things. It's hinted at big bad guys in the way that previous trailers didn't, which is like taking us away from all of the new stuff they've introduced. I get why they had to focus on that previously. It just wasn't necessarily what I wanted from Zelda, as impressive as it is. I don't know if we're seeing dungeons there. That cart ride could have been a dungeon, but obviously there's just less focus on that in general. All the new abilities do look really cool. The big temple coming out of the sand, that looked awesome. So this is a very good trailer, definitely the best trailer yet. I still would not say I'm as excited as I was about Breath of the Wild, but I think that that's also like, the time it came out, it was very different. What it did was very, very different. It came on new hardware that we didn't know the capabilities of yet, whereas now we're a little bit more aware of the limitations that come with the Nintendo Switch. The music was beautiful. It had so much heart. And it is really hard to sell people on the appeal of Breath of the Wild, which was, in my opinion, the exploration. We spoke about this earlier during the stream, but I also was a fan of weapon degradation, and a lot of people didn't like it, but I like the way it makes me think. It adds an extra layer of complexity during combat. I'm a big fan of that. Definitely also just concerned about how it's going to run. Nintendo can do such a fantastic job with Mario and Zelda, but Breath of the Wild still had a ton of frame rate drops, and I feel like gaming audiences are only getting less accepting of that kind of stuff, less forgiving of that kind of stuff. And it does look pretty damn big. And with the amount of stuff you can do with the physics, it's also just, I'm going to get shit for this because I get it even when I say it about Pokemon, which seems nuts to me. Like I've said it with Pokemon trailers, people give me shit. It is unfortunately not a very good looking game. Just graphically compared to everything else on the market. Art style wise, I think is beautiful and I really like it. And I love the world of Breath of the Wild and getting lost in the world of Breath of the Wild and discovering things that you never knew existed and just freaking out. But yeah, it's in my opinion, kind of undeniable that the Switch hardware is holding back games that are running on the Switch at this point. And I say that even with the Switch OLED, which I really like. It's just unfortunate that for all of the incredible innovations the team is obviously making and how impressive they are technically, it's just the dirt textures, it's just hard to ignore that. It's just a bummer. Definitely miles ahead of Scarlet and Violet. Don't disagree with you there. But the Switch is what it is. Okay. So we also got, since this happened, a bunch of previews came out from different media outlets who, I believe they flew, actually a whole bunch of people I know to New York to check out the game. I, of course, was not one of them, as Nintendo does not like me, allegedly. So this is from IGN. It says The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom hands-on preview. It lets you test out your craziest ideas, which I appreciate, but again, is not the appeal of Zelda to me. I understand why you would show press that because they're showing them the stuff that's new, but we'll see. We'll see. Also, shout out to Brian Altano. Oh, Brian wrote it. Cool. Brian is a huge Zelda fan. It says, it should come as a surprise to exactly nobody that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is going to be an absolutely massive video game with a staggering amount of things to do and see. Is it too much if we do it for that long? You can check out skill ups as well. After all, it is the follow-up to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the biggest, deepest, and rewarding, and most rewarding open-world games ever made. But what truly caught me off guard with my time playing Tears of the Kingdom wasn't just how much there was to do, good, and there certainly was tons, it was how much creative freedom I had as I attempted to take on every corner of it so far, which is what I loved about Breath of the Wild. Again, I know Brian's a big Nintendo guy, and to say that you're caught off guard means it's leagues ahead. Breath of the Wild's core philosophy was effectively see that landmark in the distance, you can walk there. In Tears of the Kingdom, it's more like see that landmark in the distance where you have 100 different ways to get there, and a lot of them might not work, but when one does, oh boy, you're going to feel like a genius. I hadn't really considered that, okay? So because I guess my brain had focused on how much of it appears to be about crafting, which is something that doesn't appeal to me as much, I really hadn't considered that it could have the exact experience that I just had with Tunic, which was making you feel really smart when you figure something out. It's a very satisfying thing when video games pull that off correctly. If you haven't played The Witness or Tunic, play both of them. Let's step back for a sec, or should I say soar above. Nice. Floating high above Hyrule are the Skylands, and that's where the large majority of my preview of Tears of the Kingdom took place. I guess I don't have a concept of how big the Skylands are either. They look pretty big. And obviously that's the way that they're refreshing the map, right? Like they're making this map seem bigger and broader, for sure. If the Hyrule Below is the updated open world for Breath of the Wild, which makes sense, the sky sections feel more akin to the Wind Waker, just minus the big red boat to get around. That's interesting. I do love Wind Waker. You can soar through the sky on your trusty paraglider, hoping you've got enough stamina to not only make the trip, but to scale the side of whatever you're trying to get on top of. If you've played Breath of the Wild, you're already familiar with that exercise. But this time around, you got a lot more options, and that's where things get really clever and occasionally really funny. So I didn't really do that much like creative traversal in Breath of the Wild, I don't feel like. I kind of just ran places or rode the horse places. Obviously you have to climb occasionally, and a big part of it was like getting the stamina and then finally being able to climb something, and maybe that'll just work in a different way now. Gliding, yeah, we did do a lot of gliding. This time around you got a lot more options, and that's where things get really clever and occasionally really funny. Using some parts lying around, I decided to make a goofy double-decker bomber jet to fly through the skies in style. I couldn't tell you why I decided to make it a double-decker, besides I thought it looked cool at the moment, and sometimes really that's reason enough. I'm just so interested if that's something I will really enjoy. I just don't know yet. Got some screenshots. It looks exactly the same as Breath of the Wild, really. Radial wheels, object manipulations. You probably still hit the horse whistle button by accident. Be able to save custom vehicles and contraptions. I'm still just not sure. All in all, from Ultra Hand to Views and dozens of Sky Islands, these are just some of the things that make this game, the rare direct sequel to a previous Zelda game, feel the most fresh so far. That's because lots of the animations, objects, outfits, sounds, and more feel very similar to Breath of the Wild, which is admittedly a slight letdown based on how much of that game hinged around surprise and discovery. True. But Tears of the Kingdom is layered or tiered, and the way you interact with nearly everything is evolved in creative and dramatic ways, so I have little doubt that there won't be a million new things to do and see in the full game. For now, I'm getting not to only experience it all myself, but to also see how the surely massive player base will make and break this game in really and silly ways. And to be clear, that's the thing I remain very excited about. I'm really excited to see what other people do. Let's check, someone said Skill Up had a good video. Skill Up Tears of the Kingdom. Here we go. From 12 days ago.
This video is sponsored by Express.
Shut up, Ralph! This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Don't let me down, Ralph! Tell me about the world other than just the crafting! Alright, let's do it.
We have all seen the trailers, and we have all marveled at the ability of Link to MacGyver a speedboat out of some shit he found lying around on the ground, but let me tell you, you have absolutely no idea what is in store for you when it comes to this sandbox. Even based on this small section that I have seen, I cannot believe what Nintendo have built here. This sandbox is unfucking believable. The
All
number
right.
of things that you are able to build, the process that you go through to build them, the different ways that each of your abilities can be used in exploration,
it's
traversal,
incredibly
puzzle solving, and
impressive.
combat. I simply cannot fathom the mind or the minds that it took to create all of this, and I shudder to imagine the code base that makes it all possible. In 2 hours, I feel like I experienced 6 games worth of mechanics. Every new objective I encountered, I poked and prodded to see what the sandbox could withstand, and every single time it cackled back, more than able to handle anything I threw at it. The amount of ingenuity and experimentation that is possible here is just out of this world. There are definitely still many unanswered
It is
questions about
nuts.
this.
Again,
namely,
like,
how much
isn't it just like the game Raft? It is, yeah. I'm not trying to take away from any of how I feel about this, that this is extremely impressive. And that, like, we did an episode of Play Watch Listen, the video game podcast I have about it, about how impressive, it's the only word to use, Zelda's physics are. It's just not generally what I look for in a Zelda game. Like, it almost feels like a different IP at this point, you know? And that's not to say it doesn't look good. It's just different. People like
Tears of the
different.
Kingdom respond to the complaints of Breath of the Wild being too sandbox driven and not focusing enough on the legend
There you
of Zelda
go.
part.
That's
the
what I'm
mythic
after.
quests, the grand temples and dungeons, etc. It's clear that Nintendo are definitely doubling down on the sandbox,
Yeah.
but it's unclear if they haven't also buttressed that other side of the game as well. There are also plenty of question marks around performance, which I'll tell you right now, wasn't great. And yeah, it's not a final build, yada yada, but we all know the limits of the Switch at this point, and Tears of the Kingdom appears to be pushing up hard against them.
Yeah.
But even with these outstanding questions...
And I do wonder if, so Brian's preview said it was mostly pretty consistent. Ralph's preview said the performance was not great. I do wonder if this, like, them, like he said, butting up against the limitations of the Switch hardware is going to be the thing that kind of forces Nintendo to iterate on that hardware. Frame rate's going to be an issue 100%. I totally agree. Yeah. It just holds the dev teams back at this point.
2 hours with this title has already left me convinced that this is not resting on Breath of the Wild's laurels at all.
That's good news.
Even in this tiny, tiny window, this was one of the most flexible, responsive, and creative sandboxes I've ever experienced in a video game.
It's super
I
impressive
cannot
that
imagine
a
what the
franchise
full
that's been around for this
experience has in
long
store
and has
for us.
inspired this many different things is just like reiterating on open world sandboxes though. Like, they might,
Okay, so let's do
like,
this in the same
like
order.
okay, even if this doesn't end up being what people want from a traditional Legend of Zelda game, I almost wouldn't be surprised if I can remove that part of my brain, which I think maybe I haven't been able to do just yet, and I'll see come Thursday if I can stop being like, well, where are the dungeons? Like, and I can stop thinking about it that way. It wouldn't surprise me if Zelda managed to, like, soft reinvent the sandbox genre with the amount of creativity that everyone's talking about being here. Like, it's being so hyped up by everybody who played it, that I wonder if it's, like, you know, another new benchmark after Breath of the Wild already was. And that is impressive as hell, considering how much of an influence Zelda has already had on video games as a whole. Even if I'm not getting my dungeons, I don't want to take any credit away from them regarding how impressive this is.
In my own hands-on demo, I was faced with a puzzle where I needed a log, but there weren't any around. There were, however, some trees, but I didn't have an axe. So
Very
I had
cool.
a stick, I found a nearby rock, I was able to fuse the two of those together to create an axe, at which point I could chop down a tree, and I now
wonder
have myself...
how hard it's going to be. Like, am I going to be Googling solutions for things, or is it just... I feel like it's probably going to end up being one of those things where I did think this kind of happened with Breath of the Wild, where you get stuck and you're like, I wonder if this works. And you're like, oh my god, it does work.
So back to crossing this lake, the Nintendo rep built the same log raft that Aonuma did, but instead of attaching fans to it, they had some rockets in their inventory, and so that's what they
Seems
took
so
out.
silly.
They dropped them on the floor, picked them up with Ultra,
So because all of the Zonai stuff is so important, I also wonder how big your inventory is and how much inventory management will be a thing. Because it was sort of a thing in Breath of the Wild.
You'll find these large floating blocks. They're essentially zero buoyancy. They won't rise or fall except when something pushes or pulls them. So I get on the first of these and I want to cross toward another aisle. And since it's directly ahead of me, I can point the rockets in that direction and off I go.
So then you just have to hit them? Yeah. But they're angled a little bit off?
Later, I wanted to access
okay.
an aisle that was above me, so I would attach the rockets at an angle, and then that is where I would go.
Damn. This is so impressive. Like, if they don't win every technical
This is where
achievement
we
award,
can
I'd
really
be
start
shocked.
to understand the importance of physics in this sandbox. Do not imagine that every item is programmed to go in a specific direction.
Oh,
no
you
matter
can move
what.
it like while it's
Rather,
already in the air
every
as well?
object is subject to the laws of physics.
Whoa.
You know how I know that? Watch this. Do you see the way that glider is flying away? It doesn't go in a straight line. It undulates up and down
So
because
cool.
that is how aerodynamics works. If you throw a paper plane, it will do this when it loses most of its forward propulsion.
God, they're
Nintendo
so
could've just made
impressive.
this go in a straight
They
line.
just keep
But they
doing
didn't.
it.
They modeled the physics for how this object
What
would
about the
move
animals?
through space.
You
And that's
can't
just
do
one
anything with
example.
the
I will
animals.
give you another. Zonai devices have stamina in the form of Zonai charge, and part of the gameplay loop here is to steadily increase that charge by various means so your contraptions can remain powered for longer. Here, with this dumbass flying
Okay,
balloon,
so the Zonai charge thing that Ralph's talking about here has got to be how you prevent people from just being able to like get to sections of the game they aren't supposed to go to yet. Kind of in the same way that I feel like your stamina bar was in Breath of the Wild, because we saw some of those abilities where you can like rise through the bottom of a cave and come out on top. So the batteries here have got to be their means to stop us from just being able to cross the map and end up in a restricted area. I imagine it's just going to slowly dole out more charge so you can get further
contraption I
away.
made, had it more Zonai charge, I would have been able to stay in the air for longer. But instead, my flying machine morphs from hot air balloon into lead balloon.
No fall damage at all.
So I learned a lot from this failed attempt. Namely, this thing turns like an oil tanker. I'd imagine that it would kind of turn on a dime, but this turn arc you saw, that was me hard locking to the left, trying to steer
because
toward the tower.
it's stuck on a
Since I didn't have anything to
flat
improve that
plank
arc,
on the
I
back,
thought I would just
right?
point myself at the objective for the next flight. Here's how that went.
It's
Again,
really
more
interesting.
learning. I learned that I didn't have enough upward
Yeah, because you don't have enough upward propulsion, and at the same time, you don't have any means to actually, like, there's no axis on this back. Okay, I'm gonna love this. I take back everything I said. The fact that I'm so into watching Ralph solve this problem, dude, you know what it's gonna be? Okay, if I get rid of the Zelda part of my head, if I look at this as co-op, maybe this is a really, really good game to stream or a really good game to play with other people in a way that I think Breath of the Wild was too. But this even more so because you'll be solving it with each other. It's Legend of Zelda Science of the Kingdom, and I love that. And it's going to be really, really fun to solve these problems with a group of people, for sure. Thank you, Ralph, for that. Appreciate it. Shame about the Switch, obviously. Yeah, it's one of those things where when you talk about something being as creative as this seems to be, and obviously less of the promise of the Zelda that we all know and love, you kind of just got to try it before you can really say, right? I'm in agreement. I have no doubt it will be a 10 out of 10, that it will end up getting a lot of 10 out of 10s in reviews. I imagine Skill Up's headline sometime this week when his review comes out will be something along the lines of I recommend or I highly recommend. And I do hope that this leads Nintendo to improving the Switch hardware. It's just a very different direction. Very different direction. That is ultimately okay, even if it's like a direction that it's just a genre of video game that doesn't necessarily appeal to me as much. It's okay.